Well, hello everybody. Welcome back. This is part 2 of our building a spreadsheet video in our Excelling with Excel training at B.M. Williams. When we left off, we have done a little bit of the spreadsheet building, mostly focusing on sort of the inputting the data and making it look aesthetically pleasing. There's some other things that we can do as far as that's concerned, but for right now, let's focus on the data and how we build formulas and calculate the data in our spreadsheets. So the first one here, we had 3 students that took the math test, and each of these 3 students scored the first question and answered it correctly. And let's look at the next one. I'm going to say that student number 1 answered that question correctly. Student number 2 did not, and student number 3 did. So what we can do here for the student that did not answer correctly, we can either put a 0 in there or we can leave it blank. Either way, it's fine. So what I want to do down here is I want to find out how many students in all answered this question correctly. So what I'm going to do is use my function key, and I'm going to use the sum function. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to click on the function key where it says insert function, and I'm going to click on the word sum. And I'm going to click OK because that's the one I want to use. All right. And it automatically, the system tries to think that it's smarter than us. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. If you watched one of my other videos, I talked about why when they pre-fill the cells for us, it's good and sometimes it's not. But here it has pre-filled B4 through B6. And if I look over here, I'm going to just slide this out of the way for a minute. I want it to calculate B4 through B6. So that is correct. That is what I wanted to calculate, and it tells us the result would be 3, and that is correct. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. Now, on the next one, it has everything coming out a little squirrely, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight this row center and center because I don't like that number off like that. And I'm going to go ahead and build a light grid line around here too, so it's easier for us to see with the all borders. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and put a dark black border on the bottom here. So I'm just going to highlight the last row, and I'm going to do, it should say thick bottom border, and so I'm going to put that in right there, and boom, now we can see it's almost like a equal line. All right, so here is our sum right here, and so let's say I want it to do the same thing for every question all the way along. Well, I could go to each cell and hit function, sum, function, sum, function, sum, and go all the way across and do that every time. Or what I can do is go to the bottom right hand of the cell that I just did the function formula with. I can left click and I can pull it all the way across the cells. And now what I have done when I let go is I have put that formula into every line there. So you'll notice it automatically added 1 and 2 together here. It says 0 here because there's absolutely nothing written in yet. But once I do add something in, like for example right here, you'll notice it automatically adds it up for us. Beautiful. All right, now that we know the number of students that answered correctly, now we want to know the percentage of students that answered correctly. Well, in order to figure out the percent, we need to tell the computer how many students took the test. And so typically what I do is I write a little thing right here that says how many the test. And I usually ask you in the cell above to put in the number of students that took the test. So in this case, we have 3 students that took the test. And I usually highlight this in yellow for you so that you won't forget to change it. Because if you do not update this number, what will happen is the calculations will come out incorrectly. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell the computer that I want it to take this number and divide it by the number in this cell. Okay? So what I'm going to do is you can use the function here, or anytime you want to build your own function, you start by using the equal signs. So I'm going to say this cell is going to equal B7. So B7, which is the 3 here, okay? So B7 divided by, which is going to be your backslash, divided by this number, which is A7. Okay. And yes, it does say 1 right now. But so what I need to do is I'm going to right click, and in Format Cells, I need to change this number. So I'm going to go to Number, and I want it to be a percentage. So I'm going to change it to percentage. I usually drop the decimal place to 0 just so it's easier for us to read. And so I'm going to hit OK. So now it tells me that 100% of the students in this class answered this question correctly. I usually like to change this maybe to be in red. So I come up to the little A, just like in Microsoft Word. I'm going to change the color to red. Again, I'm going to center and center because I don't like it not centered. Okay. Now, here's what's a little tricky. You might say, well, Jen, can't we just click and drag all the way across here to make the percentage work out? I understand where you're coming from, but we cannot do that. And let me explain why. If you notice up here, the formula says equals B7 divided by A7 in the formula bar. Well, let's just say that I do that, and I do drag it over to the next box. What's happening is correct. It will say C7 divided by, now here's what's interesting. C7 right here, is now being divided by B7. So that is incorrect. It happens to work out correctly in this case because this happens to be a 3 and this happens to be a 3. But really, it is now, instead of using the number of students, which is A7, it's using this number that it's dividing by. And that will not be correct. So what we need it to say every time is it needs to be divisible by A7 every time. And let's just say I moved it over another one. Okay, let's say I dragged it over again and copied that formula. So I left clicked and I left clicked and dragged that cell across. Now you'll notice when I look at this formula, now it says D7 divided by C7. The problem is every time it adds over, the second number or set in the cell is adding a letter to it. So it's going A, B, C, D, and whoa, that's not what we need. We needed everything to be divided by A7. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to do something which Excel has a wonderful feature, and what we do is in front of that A7, we're going to add what's called a $sign. Okay, what it means is we want absolutely every time for it to divide by A7. So we are making it, that $sign makes it an absolute. Okay, so I'm going to come and delete those ones that were incorrect. And now we're going to go back to right here. We have equals B7 divided by absolute A7. That means instead of that letter going up each time when I drag across, it's all going to refer back to the A7 cell. So let's see. We're going to make it our black cross. We're going to left click. We're going to drag all the way across, and let's make sure that I have it correct. Okay, so you'll notice everything turned into a percentage. And if I come and look at that cell right now, notice it says A7. If I come to this one over here, notice it says A7. If I come over here, notice it says A7. All right, earlier today in one of the other modules that we worked on, we talked about what do we do if we add a line. Well, I want to talk a little bit about what if we add a row? What if I made a mistake and I have to add another question in? Well, I would simply come up to the top and I would hit insert. Uh-oh, now I have a missing formula here. What am I going to do? Well, you can come to the cell before, go to the very bottom right corner, left click and drag it. Whoops, too sensitive, sorry. Hold on. Go to the bottom left corner, left click on here, and drag that formula along. And now that formula is exactly the same, and you are all ready to go. No problems at all. All right, so now we have our formula figured out for by question. No problem at all. But what if we want to find out what the student scored overall? Well, this is where it gets interesting. We could use the same formula at the end that we did at the bottom. So we figured out the formula going vertically here. We could do the same thing going horizontally if every question on the test is worth the same amount of points. If that's the case, easy peasy, no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add another line in here for the question number on the test. So let's do that. We put in the type of question, but let's put in the question number so we know how many numbers we have. And I'm going to change this color because I don't want them both the same. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change this to like a blue. Okay, and then I'm going to type in question number. All right, I'm going to use the autofill that I learned earlier today. So I'm going to start with the 1 and drag it all the way across, and let's see how many questions I had made on this test. And it gives me all ones. I'm going to go to the drop down menu and click fill series. And when I do that, oh wait, I made a 19 question test. Very interesting. All right, well, let's make it an even 20, shall we? So I'm going to hit insert right here. Okay, now you'll notice you'll say, uh-oh, my numbers are out of order right now. I have formulas missing. All these green diamonds showed up, triangles. What is going on with this? Okay, first of all, a little hint about the green triangles when they come up. There's two things. One, if you see them on a data sheet like this, what it's saying to you is, hey, this formula that you have here is different from this formula you have here. In other words, it likes neighbors doing the same thing, and if they're suddenly not doing the same thing, it's worried. So what we're going to do right here, let's go back to 100%. Good golly. I'm telling you, sensitive mouse I got here. All right. So we're going to go back here, and I'm going to bottom right-hand corner, left click, pull across. Now you'll notice that it still says, it has a little warning on here. It says the formula in this cell refers to a range that has additional numbers adjacent to it. So again, what we were just talking about, All you have to do to get rid of those annoying little green tags, because they're not my favorite for sure, you can highlight all of the ones that have your little green tags there, and then you'll come to this warning sign right here, and you're just going to say ignore this error. In other words, it doesn't understand why are you using this number instead of the number next to it. It's confused. And I understand it's kind of a warning there for you, but I prefer, it's just because of what we're doing, it has to be done that way. All right, so I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to auto